In this video, I'll begin reviewing the different prototype settings for a catch basin. Here in the prototypes dialog, I have just created a new prototype for a catch basin, and I'm going to just go down and review all the different settings. Starting with the general setting, the only thing that you might include here is going to be a notes section where you could provide additional information about the element for a particular type of catch basin. In the geometry section, we're not going to set up anything in here for the prototype. However, I do want to explain what the set out point is. So inside of the top 3D cell, if we include a point on line style 1 or 2, then we can get an additional X, Y, and Z position inside of the nodes. So if that exists in the cell model, then these will populate. Line style 1 is just going to give us the elevation of the top elevation point. Line style 2 is going to give us the elevation of where that point is actually placed on line style 2. The design section is all going to relate to settings when we're running a design calculation option. So we can set local inlet constraints and local pipe matching constraints here that are going to relate to a particular type of catch basin. So if a certain type of catch basin always has a maximum spread or gutter depth or efficiency, it would make sense to do this. Otherwise, you're likely going to want to leave this to false. Same thing with pipe matching constraints. If a certain type of catch basin always has a certain pipe matching method, then we're going to want to set that here, but otherwise we're going to set that to false. The only time I have personally set this to true inside of a prototype is for a structure like this, where we have a drop inlet that is tying into a box culvert. So for this type of structure, I would have my connection region right here, and I would be connecting the box culvert to either side. And I would never want to have a situation where my inverts are going to be different. So in that case, I did do a local pipe matching constraint set to true, and then had the pipe matching set at the invert with a match line offset of 0 with no drop structures. But again, in most cases, that's going to be false. And then when we are running a design, do you want the software to design the invert elevation true or false? Would you like to design a sump depth, which is going to be the depth below the lowest pipe invert in the invert of the structure? So we can specify that. You can also specify what the minimum and maximum conduit cover is going to be at the nodes. And if we opt to include that inside of the prototype, then you're going to additionally want to go into your default design constraints in the node tab and toggle on use node cover constraint here. The freeboard required, that's the depth below the rim elevation that's going to be used to determine the lower limit of a overflow risk. So you would input what that value is there. And then lastly, we have design inlet opening. Going back to the default design constraints, during a design, the software will try to meet this minimum efficiency on grade. So for all of your on-grade inlets, if we are not meeting this minimum efficiency, then the software can go ahead and design that inlet opening and make it larger to meet that efficiency. And that only happens if this is set to true. I always set this to true, however, even if I don't want the software to design the inlet opening. And the reason why I set it to true is to keep this toggle unlocked, because if we set this to false, then we can't do anything with the local inlet constraints. So I'll leave this set to true, and then I'll handle it inside of the inlet catalog instead. So the only way we can design the inlet opening is if we are using a inlet type set to catalog inlet, and in that catalog we've included a design length library here. So for a particular type of inlet, you would have standard lengths available for the software to choose from, and it's always going to start with the smallest value and then work its way up to meet that efficiency. But if we don't have anything in here, then there'll be nothing to choose from, and it will just use the standard lengths that we have input here.